Open the room. Oh, okay. Did you open the room?
I did. I'm going to mute you because it's going to double talk for a second quick. So unmute yourself when you're ready.
How's that? Open the room. Oh, okay.
That's what I meant. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to launch this poll if you don't mind filling that out. Just get us a good idea of who's here. If you're an artist, we'll want to talk more about different requirements for the residency. So definitely go ahead and fill that out. We'll get started in maybe 2 minutes. I'm going to be swatting. I'm outside. I'm going to be swatting at mosquitoes. Just be prepared for that.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks to you who are coming back from last week's meeting. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. We're going to actually get started. Don't you think we should get started right on time?
If you think so. Yeah, I was going to give another 30 seconds, but we can jump right into it. I'm going to pull the presentation up, but please continue to fill out that poll if you haven't yet. Okay. Great. Well, thanks again for joining us. I'll go ahead and end that poll for now. Get it out of the way. But yeah, we're here and excited to talk about the Arts in Residence program. So thanks for joining us. My name is Ilza Haryu. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the supervisor for the Arts in Residence program and the Environmental Learning Center at Recology in San Francisco. We're also hearing from our manager of the program today, Deborah Monk. Seema Stong is an amazing shop tech with us, but not talking today. Micah Gibson making a surprise appearance in the background today. Thanks for being here, Micah. And then Weston Taruya is one of our former artists in residence. He will sit down with each artist midway through the residency and kind of talk about what their work entails and write for us. So we've got an amazing team that we're really lucky to have. And yeah, excited that so many of us are here to talk with you today. So you'll get some really good insight to the program. We'll also hear from Malcolm, who's one of our current artists in residence as well. One of 4 at the moment. So you'll get some insight of what the experience is really like as well. So I'm going to jump right in with some context information. So we're talking about the Artists in Residence program, but it's nestled within this larger Recology company that does very different work. So a little context about where that is kind of nestled inside of. Recology has been around for over 100 years. We're a resource recovery company. Our founders were Italian immigrants who would go around in these horse-drawn carriages and collect discarded materials, all for reuse. So they would sort them right in the back of these wagons. And that reuse mentality has always been found from the beginning a foundational aspect of our company. And today, that looks very different. We're still collecting different types of waste in San Francisco and redirecting it to be reused through recycling and composting programs. But we also still have this landfill bin today for those few items that still go in there. So I'm going to walk through each of these programs so quickly, just one side each, before I get into the Arts in Residence program. And so that first one, our compost program, our green bin material is all natural stuff, organic material like food scraps or plant material that we basically just put in these big piles. And we really work to provide the best habitat that we can for all of the microorganisms in there that are going to eat that food and break it down into this really nutrient-rich soil amendment. Just in as fast as 45 days, we've got this compost at the end of the process, which we then sell to farmers. We put the compost on their farms, their vineyards, their orchards, and it really helps those new plants grow because it's got all of these nutrients in there from all of that food scraps and all that food waste. So returns nutrients to the soil. It pulls carbon down from the atmosphere and traps it in the soil. holds onto water like a sponge. So farmers can produce, dramatically more food and higher yields in times of drought if they farm with compost. So I'll stop there for the benefits, but there really are just a million benefits of compost. So join our Recology webinar on Wednesdays if you're interested in learning more about that. But next, I'll just overview this recycling program. All of these different items that get placed in this blue bin, there's 5 different items. They get mixed and jumbled in the same bin. And then we're going to take it to our facility, Recycle Central up Pier 96, and sort those back into their separate commodities. So we want all of the paper in one pile, all of the aluminum in another pile, and so on. We'll take those materials and we send them to companies. We try to, preference local companies when we can, domestic companies when we can, to really take those items, use them again, make them into something new, and keep them in production. Really reduce our impact on our natural environment, pull out less, and reduce our emissions. It's a really amazing program as well. And again, if you're interested in learning about this, join the Recology webinar. Our last bin, the landfill bin, is material that we don't really know how to reuse at this point, or there isn't really a market for those materials. And luckily at this point, there's not much that goes in this bin. We keep about 80% of the items that people throw away in San Francisco in use. So they go to one of those other recycling or composting programs. But of the material that still gets put in this bin, over half of it could have also been directed to a different recycling or composting program. So there's still a far way to go on this. And we can all, improve our daily sorting and all of that. So all of this material, though, it doesn't get sorted. No one's looking through this material and pulling out those mistakes. It all heads to the landfill in Vacaville. So that's about 65 miles east of San Francisco. Doesn't get reused, basically just gets wasted. So again, try not to put too much in this bin. So that's a quick overview, all of those different materials. And those recycling composting programs that we have. But again, check out that webinar if you're interested in more. There's a lot more there. But our artist in residence program is kind of nestled within this larger company. And it's really working to get people to think in creative ways about waste, really rethink what waste is, and give examples of those creative reuse options of what we could do with our waste instead, and a new way to look at it. So we've got artists that join us for a residency. We pay them, they take trash or things that people threw away, resources that people threw away, and then they create new work with it. So this is our ELC, our Environmental Learning Center, where our tours traditionally start when they're in person. And there's a gallery space in here that we show rotating assortment of our former artists' work, as well as our student artists. At the end of their residency, they showcase their work in this building too. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the program, where it came from, and then I'll pass it over to Deborah, who will talk a little bit more about how to be a part of the program and apply to it. So Jo Hansen was our founder. She was an artist and activist who lived in the Lower Haight in San Francisco, and she would collect the items outside of her home and litter that she found. She got a name for this sweeping practice that she would do outside of her home and collecting those materials. That work really caught the attention of the city. She had a citywide anti-litter campaign going, and they brought her out to Recology to see where all of those materials would end up. When she saw the pile at the public reuse and recycling area, she really recognized a lot of resources that artists could use. So together, the city, Jo Hansen, Recology created this program 32 years ago. So quite the legacy, kind of an interesting, unique program. And the mission of this program has really stayed pretty similar throughout the years, really working to support our local artists and support our local community, spreading stories, giving a platform for community perspectives and stories, as well as this other more environmental, using materials in a unique way, and then sharing that and giving those examples of creative reuse and getting people to think twice about the value of these materials. And so this right here is our front studio space. So one artist has access to this room. It's pretty large. It converts to that exhibition space at the end, as you can see here. And then in the same building, just in the back of this building, there's a second studio. So each artist gets their own shared building. So in addition to the free discarded materials, our artists get paid an unrestricted stipend of $14.50 for the professional artists and $4.50 for our student artist program. They get a large studio like you just saw, which converts into that exhibition venue. They get administrative support, help installing and hanging the work, promoting the exhibition, and then a full range of tools as well. We accept artists from all different disciplines, so our workshop is pretty stocked with different hand tools, saws, electric tools, for whatever artists may need. So if there's something that you're wondering if we might have it, feel free to pop that in the Q&A and we can let you know. So here's a few behind the scenes photos of our different staff members helping out artists, kind of some of those tools in there, table saw, chop saw, CMAP's doing a lot of work in a lot of these photos. They're really great. And then this is the public reuse and recycling area. So our artists are not scavenging from the bin material that I walked through. They're pulling from this pile, which is basically the dump. So anyone can come with their car or their truck, they drop off whatever materials they don't want anymore. And then our artists get to go through this pile before it gets sorted for further recycling. So artists get access to this, and then also the household hazardous waste program for things like paints or adhesives, dyes. They can, pull all those different household hazardous waste items as well. So at the end of, I've got one more slide here of more inside photos of the dump. I guess it's worth noting here that it's a dirty environment, it's waste, right? Like this is trash. So you just got to be open to that. If you're interested in applying, that's what the environment's going to be. It's dirty, it's loud, there's a lot going on, but it's a very unique and interesting opportunity as well. So feel free to ask questions about that as well, and we can get a little more in detail with what the experience is like. But at the end of the residency, we've got 2 artists working at a time for the professional program. They're with us for 4 months. And then at the end of that 4 months, we put on a 3-day exhibition. So the work is not up for very long, but they're pretty fun events. It's a Friday, Saturday, and Tuesday. We've got hundreds of people that usually come through to see the work. It's kind of a party. Sometimes we have beer and wine, we'll see if we're back to doing that. We kind of put that on hold for COVID. So that may be a thing again for next year. But it's really a great opportunity. We promote the exhibition. A lot of people get to see it. And then we continue to showcase our artists' work after the residency ends as well. So I've got a few examples of that. So after our artists leave, they leave behind between 1 and 3 works of art that we continue to showcase across the city in different galleries and organizations, businesses. This was the largest one that we did at the SFO Museum back in 2013. And, it was about 100 works. Many people, millions of people saw this work. And was just a really great opportunity for us. But we're constantly showcasing our work from our former artists across the city. I think I've got a couple more examples of locations that we've shown at, but as of camera work, the Bedford Gallery, we did a pretty big exhibition there this past fall, and we'll be doing a traveling exhibition with them in the future across the US. So very exciting. And then one other piece of the puzzle that I just want to cover before I pass it over to Deborah is is this other aspect of what we do with education. So we have the tour program. There's usually, pre-COVID, it was between 3 and 5 tours coming through the facility every week. We'll see what that looks like when we go back to in-person tours. Right now, obviously, we're doing these webinars instead, but that may be an aspect of the residencies in 2023. But we've got all different types of people coming through the facility, children as young as the 3rd grade, up through, all adults with all different types of interests, artists who are coming through to talk about art or creative reuse, as well as environmentalists or people, just from companies wondering how to package their items better so that they can be recycled. So a full spectrum of different people coming through, and they all filter through the artist studios during the tour. And so we require that one artist is there at least to talk to every tour group, kind of just show what's going on in their studio and say hi. And it's pretty good practice for our artists to really talk about their work and their process and get some interesting feedback from kids along the way. So yeah, it's just one other aspect of the residency. And right now, obviously, we're doing these webinars. We'll see what it looks like next year. So with that, I think I want to pass it over to Deborah to talk about the application process.
Great. Thank you, Elsa, for that wonderful presentation, overview of the program, and a little bit about what Recology does. And thanks, Malcolm, for joining us. So after I talk for a little bit, Malcolm is going to talk about his work and what he's doing. And it looks like from the poll, everyone here, or at least like 90% of everyone here, is here because you're interested in applying to the program. So that's very exciting. If you have any questions about the application process, please feel free to throw it in the Q&A. So we've worked with over 200 artists now since 1990, and mostly Bay Area artists. And it's surprising, the work is so varied, and that's surprising because artists are basically pulling from the same pile of materials, and it really doesn't change that much. Artists work in all different mediums like photography and video and sound, cartoons, performance. We've had painters and sculptors and composers in residence, and those who place an emphasis on research. And this is the first time in 2 years that we've accepted applications, so we're thrilled that we can begin the process again. Next slide. So we are accepting applications through September 1st in Slide Room, like I said. When you send us images, we're going to ask for 6. When you send those 6 images, make sure that they are clear, that we can see them on the screen, and send us images, 6 images of your strongest work. So don't send us images where you're using recycled materials because you think that that's what we want. It's not. So we're not a junk art program. We're not even really in an environmental program. We're a program for artists who may have never worked in found materials, but we understand that when you're here, it'll become part of your practice, and it'll change your practice. But we really want to see your strongest work. We'll meet with the advisory board in October to choose the 8 to 10 finalists, and then from that group, we'll choose the 6 artists for 2023. Next slide. It's open to emerging, mid-career, and established artists. Also talked about speaking to tour groups. We ask, well, one of the requirements is that artists use 95% of found materials in the final work. And it's amazing what you can find, like adhesives and paints and just anything you can imagine pretty much can be found. If there's something that you can't find, like some of our artists are looking for concrete. We used to have concrete that would come in wet. It's not coming in. If we absolutely can't find any concrete, we might buy a bag of concrete, for instance. We ask that the artists are here 20 hours a week. If you have a full-time job Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, this residency will not work for you because we need to see you. You need to be here at least sometimes for the tours. And we work Monday through Friday. We ask that you create a body of work for a final exhibition, and there are some restrictions on the work. So we function kind of like the Arts Commission, for instance, where there can't be any controversy because all of the customers in San Francisco, all of the folks in San Francisco and all the businesses in San Francisco are our customers. So And also a lot of the folks who come through are kids. So there's no violence, no sexual content, weapons, offensive remarks about individuals or businesses, and there's limitations on political commentary. So you can't call out a specific politician, for instance. And then we keep 2 or 3 pieces for the permanent collection, and it's not something where we will go and say we want those 2 pieces. It's a conversation. We want smaller pieces that we can manage and that maybe 1 or 2 people can lift, and we wouldn't want to take your favorite pieces. Also, everything is for sale at the opening, and we respect that. It's a 60-40 split, so 60% goes to the artist and 40% goes to Recology. Next slide. This is just an image of some of the artists who are scavenging. We ask artists to weigh their materials because we like to see how many tons we divert from the landfill. We have an incredible board of directors. Well, they're not a board of directors, they're an advisory board, and they're arts professionals. Some of them are former artists, and we meet every year to review about 100 to 150 applications. I have no idea how many applications are going to come in this year because it's been closed for 2 years, but they're coming in, and it's exciting to see some of the names. So these are the folks who will help us choose the artist. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of the artists. I'm going to be brief. If you come back to another webinar, we'll focus on other artists. Like I said, there's been 200 artists, and it's really difficult to choose who to talk about because of so many wonderful and amazing projects. So this is Isis and Nicole, and they shared the residency, and they did a spoof on Martha Stewart's way of living. And so they created these rooms where they embellished furniture. They had a bed. You can see Nicole sewing a quilt made out of baseball cards that they used on the bed that you see on the right. And so somebody asked the question earlier, do folks who collaborate split the stipend? And yes, so if you apply with 2 people, you have to split the $1,500 stipend. Next slide. Andy is known for the styrofoam Hummer that he built. So he saw a Hummer, he measured it. It's 2 scale, life size. Most of it's styrofoam. There's a little bit of wood at the bottom of it. But this traveled all over the United States. It was in a gallery in Florida. It was on a reality show called Shipping Wars. So it has a very wonderful life after Recology. Next artist. So James became interested in birds when he was in residence, and so he built this birdhouse that his son's bird lived in while he was here. And he also started finding these little photographs, and we have some restrictions on photographs that you can use. So for instance, if you found a photo of somebody from say 1970 or 1950, we wouldn't want you to use that because we want to protect our customer's identity. So, and the rule is anything post 1930, you have to obscure the face. So he found these little photographs of the linemen who were putting in the telephone lines in the 1930s, which was fine. But you can see this image where, oh, I don't have it here, but I think maybe on the next slide. I hope I have it. There it is. So these are, go back one. These are very large drawings that he recreated using found ink and found paint from the facility. Okay, and Dio took the idea of working with styrofoam a little further. He built this tree that again traveled and we showed all over San Francisco. And his goal was to use materials that don't biodegrade or take a very long time to biodegrade. Next is Val. And she works with paper. She was influenced by her father, who died when she was young and was a long haul truck driver. And so these have this map-like quality, but they're not based on any actual maps. She has a huge piece at the library, at the airport, at SFO Airport in Terminal 2 that is just outstanding. So if you're there, please have a look. Ferris is an illustrator. His work incorporates and rearticulates elements of Japanese and other world religions like iconography. All of the paint that he found came from the household hazardous waste, and even the panels that he drew and painted on were also found. Next. Abel created these large scale collages and mixed media sculptures that were exploding and imploding. He built these smaller drawings that he called skins for his sculptural forms. Next slide. Nikki carved a series of puppets and performed Dante's Inferno. So she recreated her idea of what Dante's Inferno would look like as a puppet show. Next slide. Lauren DeChocho works with fabric, and she describes what she's doing is working with items and objects that are obsolescing. So the record, the album, the incandescent light bulb. And when she was in residence, or when she first started, she said, do you think I'm going to find enough thread and fabric? And she found, like, the pile of fabric and thread that she found was incredible. And I believe to this day, she's still using some of the materials, which is not uncommon. Many of the artists use materials that they found many, many years ago in their ongoing practice. Next. Tamara is a sound artist, and she took apart all of these speakers, and she built this like cocoon-like shape out of the speaker cones, and then she recorded her heartbeat. So you could sit in underneath the cone and hear her heartbeat. And she also found like a tape of, I believe it was a VHS tape of sounds from space, or sounds from NASA, which is really cool. So a sound artist. And next is Stephanie Sahuko. This is her scavenging. In the next slide, you'll see an image of the installation. She's interested in like reproductions. Her work speaks at this time spoke to like shoddy materials and cheap labor that's used to produce these affordable contemporary furniture pieces. And these are copies of big box copies of the originals that were made probably in the 1940s or 1950s by designers and like Eames, Ray and Charles Eames, and they were made for the masses. They were made well, they were made to last. But then big box stores recreated them, reproduced them. They weren't made to last. And so her pieces are even worse than the big box pieces. They're made out of duct tape and staple guns. They're very, very delicate. So she's commenting on also on the waste associated with consumption and production. You don't see it, but in the back, there's all these, everything's painted gray. Okay, I got to keep going. Jeremy's a stop motion animator and performer. He found this harp, or actually Micah found the harp, and he created this stop motion animation piece that he performed in front of. Sam worked with encyclopedias, and so he ripped the encyclopedias apart, and what you see on the ground are the inside of the front cover. In the next image, I believe you'll see the final exhibition installation, and he's commenting on who's included in our encyclopedias and our history books, and more interestingly, more importantly, who's not included. Next is Iman, she's a printmaker, and she also explored issues around labor. This is a photo of her and Cara Maria scavenging. This is Cara Maria, and she is a painter, and all of the paint she found was from household hazardous waste. And so there's these very dynamic, colorful paintings, but in the paintings, there's a very detailed painting of an animal. So she painted all of the animals that were on site while she was here. And now she's working with endangered species, kind of in the same theme. Jamil is a photographer. He's on our advisory board. He helps us choose artists. He explores issues around identity and how our identities change according to our circumstance. Next. This is another photo, a self-portrait. Next. Jeremiah, during his residence, he scavenged fragments of personal writing. So he would find something on the ground where somebody, like a diary or something, and he turned the text into poetry for performers who read them in these series of videos. Next slide. And this is in the PDRA or the PRRA where artists scavenge, and it's this big industrial building, and we filled it up with this red, I guess it was, I can't remember exactly, it was something like red rice or something non-toxic, and then this woman read some of the poetry, and then it was in a video in his final exhibition. Next, this is him walking around very dangerously in some boxes that were thrown away. Sherry Lynn is a quilt maker, and she held quilt making classes on a Saturday. Next, there's a lot of artists in here. So this is Kate Rhodes, she works in film, and she made a 27-minute video based on Jim Henson's film Labyrinth. And she developed this backstory for the junk lady that's in the original film. And so she touched on issues around economics and debt and loss and death. Next is Allison created this Wonder Calmer, which is this wonder cabinet. So at the opening, it's really long. It's like 25, 27 feet. And at the opening, she and another person would stand there and open the doors. And inside each of the doors, I think there were 30 of them, there were these like fantastical San Francisco environments. Miguel Arzabe worked in video installation and paper weaving. Next. Weston again writes for the program, and he works exclusively in paper. And he focuses on issues around different sites and different communities. Kathy Liu is a ceramicist, and she applied pottery techniques to non-ceramic materials such as coiling Ethernet and coaxial cable in the same way one would coil clay. And so she produced her own versions of these classical Chinese vessels. I'm not really talking a lot about like the conceptual intent of each artist. If you want to learn more, you can go to our website, and there's a lot of information on each of their pages. Okay, next. Rodney turned his attention to San Francisco and its history and all of the changes, and he created these mixed media works using the lath and plaster from old San Francisco houses. And so he combined texts, next slide, and photographic portraits from the early 20th century. So a lot of the text he also found, but he also heard. Next. Oh my goodness. So this is 3 artists together, and they created a line of clothing titled The Young and the Restless. And it was inspired by a collection of 90s R&B CDs that they found. We built this 50-foot catwalk. It was incredible. There were 27 models modeling the garments that they made. Leah works in color. So 2 weeks into her residency, she sees these objects that were very familiar to her and that were thrown away in the PRRA. And then she realized that they were objects that she had made for another project like 3 years prior that had been thrown away. And so it was simultaneously traumatic and interesting to her. So she grabbed them all, and they were these rounds that were pink for the other project. And then she painted them. And when you mix the colors on the round, you get the color of the stripe behind the round. Next. Kathy, Kathy works a lot in styrofoam, but she focused on patriarchy. And she used satire to discuss like serious issues. So this looks like marble, but it's all carved styrofoam. Next. Mansour works in textile, and you can't tell, but this piece really pulls out from the wall. So it's very dimensional, and it's also embedded with herbs. So it smells really good. And he wove his family's history into the piece. So For instance, in the piece on the left, it's his great grandparents' migration out of the South to the North. And at the top left, there were like the Northern stars, which they would, theoretically follow to leave the Jim Crow South. Next. Manouche, she created these sculptural assemblages that were embedded with stop motion videos. In the next slide, I think you'll see, yes. And she's exploring like discarded elements from our everyday lives. And there's this like suggestion of this futuristic city or monuments overtaken and then rebuilt from the trash. Oh, great. Okay, so now I'll get to Malcolm, who's here with us. That was a lot of artists. I didn't realize we had so many in there, but it gives you an idea and a sense of the different types of work that can be created. So Malcolm, are you there? Okay, great. I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Malcolm. I have a residency. I'm splitting it with Rachel Marina, but she couldn't be here today. We started the residency about 2 years ago, and then the pandemic hit, so it's been on hold for quite some time. It's been interesting coming back and just getting reacquainted with all the stuff we picked 2 years before, and just kind of being aware of how the program works and how to pick trash. So the second time around, it feels like starting from the beginning, but we have a lot of stuff left over. If you can see from the photographs, we started doing a mini golf course, which I think we're gonna still pursue, but we found all that foam in the trash and we were cutting it, and I didn't ever want to cut foam again after cutting all that, and then it was put on hold. So I'm gonna suck it up and carve a little foam to finish out. But we have a lot of materials, but coming back in, just it feels brand new. So you go into the trash, and everything you find, there's sort of a cause and effect where you find it and it might change your idea about something, and it might make you want to find something else. So it's really, the process is pretty organic and pretty intimidating to begin, just going into the trash, and it looks like nothing at first, and you just start spending some time and picking through stuff, and something will pop out, and then before you know it, you filled carts and carts and carts with stuff and diverted it. And it's, to me, it's just like the perfect art program where you get to source your own materials and just let it unfold the way that the way that the trash dictates. I'm just sitting here and just noticed while I was watching the presentation that there's all these items around me, so I could just show some, just with, there's this little cast iron, there's I don't know, the world's smallest shoe polish right here, this high video camera that works, there's a bunch of toys, and like this Alice in Wonderland switch plate. So this isn't even the stuff I'm looking for. I want to find stuff to do a whole build out with, but you're kind of faced with all of these little nostalgic items that pass through your hands. And so, like one of the workers said, it's got the best return policy. So if you don't want it, you put it in the free pile, you bring it back into the trash, and hopefully you pull a lot more out of the trash than you put back. So is there another slide? Okay, yeah, this is just more of the same. That was the tent that Rachel and I built to carve foam in, that over 2 years we'd come back occasionally and check on it, and it just sagged and fell down. And then on the right is sort of this Rube Goldberg inspired contraption where we built a little elevator, and you put a golf ball in, pull it up, and it kind of swings down this series of pipes. So I'm actually working on that since it was one of the last things that we did. So I'm just getting reacquainted with that and kind of touching it up. Is there enough? Oh, so this is some of the work that I had made a few years prior. It's very, very small, detailed, just kind of references to San Francisco architecture. I guess sort of a reference to like a changing landscape, and how there's these sort of overlooked relics of buildings that, you know, might have been common when they were built, but at this point, they have a lot of gravity for people that are from here or have lived here a long time. So it's been interesting working really small and intimate on these projects. Those are, you know, this big. So it's been interesting shifting that to the process here, and just the vastness of what people dump makes you want to really go big. So I've been switching my brain to go bigger. So that's been a good thing to just as I've evolved with the program.
Cool. And when is the opening? Do you remember? I think
Yeah, it's October 14, 15, and then the talk, which will probably be something like this, will be on the 18th of October.
yeah, it is going to be a really fun exhibition. I can't wait. We also have David Bayous in the back room, and then we have a student artist from Stanford, Omar Elsa Brout, who will be showing over here in the Environmental Learning Center. So yeah, I'm excited about the golfing. Is it putt-putt golf? Miniature
Yeah,
golf.
we'll see. Yeah, but it's taking shape. I'm just kind of dedicating the first month and a half or so to picking, and I've been actually slowly building stuff, but I want to ramp up to a point where I'm just building out the scene, but I want more than enough materials. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. If you want to stick around, there might be some questions.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Malcolm.
Of course.
Okay, so we also have a student program, and that's for students enrolled in universities or colleges in the Bay Area. So they have to be pretty close by. Student artists work out of a shipping container. It's a 40-foot shipping container. There are a lot of tools, but it's not like the main program, because we figure that students can go to the school, the university or college shop. So I'm going to talk about a few of the student artists. Next. Oh, is it? Yeah, next slide. So Ethan, another Stanford student, studied both marine science and visual art, and he's very interested and continues to be very interested in what's happening in the oceans and all the plastics in the ocean. So this is the whale tail. It's obviously the tail of a whale that's wrapped in plastic rope. And then what you see cascading from the backpack are individual coffee cup lids that somebody threw away, a company threw away, brand new, never been used. And this piece, the whale tail, was at the airport exhibition. Sorry, go ahead. And this is Shushan, a CCA graduate, and she made a series of sculptures and furniture, and she, by weaving and coiling, similar to what Kathy Liu was doing, and knotting, but she used the framework of existing chairs or stools, and her intent was to honor those who work in marginalized industrial manufacturing. Next artist is, and she has this belief that anybody can learn how to do this. So at the opening, she was teaching all of the visitors who were interested in learning how to weave and coil. Ricky was graduated from UC Berkeley, and we were gifted a loom that sat in our studio for years. And we were also gifted this woman had hand dyed her own yarn using natural herbs and leaves, and she gave us all of this, and so it sat there. And Ricky works in fabric, and when they came to the residency, they asked if they could put the loom together. And so in the next image, I believe you'll see the loom that they used, and then all of this lovely hand-dyed yarn that this woman documented like what herbs she used to make the specific color. So if you could go back, Elsa. So then Ricky used all of this, and they created these two pieces that are intersecting. So intersection of different folks, and the woman who donated the loom came to the opening, and she was older, and it was just really lovely for her to see what these like really lovely pieces that Ricky made. We often commission artists who have been in residence to do special projects. So this is Saran Norris. If you've ever been in the Mission, you've seen his murals, and we commissioned him to make this mural for kids to get them excited about recycling. And this is on one of our working trucks. Next, we have our Instagram. If you're not following us, please follow us at Recology Air. During the pandemic, we tried to do a lot of different things that everybody was trying to do. So we created a series of workshops. They're on our YouTube channel. And then most recently, when we started to come back into like the world and started having events, we had a special event with a few of our artists, with Mansour and Jeremy Rourke. And this is Rania and Mansour dancing, and then Jeremy performing. Next slide is, we created a series of panels. These still live on our YouTube channel. Next slide. And then of course our website. So Elsa mentioned our tour program, our education program. So we have a special web pages for the Environmental Learning Center. And I believe in October, we're going to open it up to tours again. So for the residencies for 2023, you will be talking to people in the studio. Mostly, I think we're going to start slow. It'll probably be mostly children, 3rd to 6th graders. Next slide. We also have programs in Portland and in Seattle and in Astoria. All of those programs are back up and running, and it's very exciting. We just had an exhibition with the Portland program, and we just celebrated 10 years in Portland. So we're going to end with this slide of our founder. This is Jo Hansen. And I love this quote, and I love this photo of her. She was an amazing and incredible and powerful woman who had an idea to start an art program that has had so many ripple effects and certainly transformed my life and the lives of the artists who have been in residence and all the folks that we touch and the kids who come on tours. So we owe a great debt to Jo. So with that, we can open it up for questions. For those of you who are applying, we're here. Just throw it in the Q&A if you have any questions. Okay. First question is there tool training for tools an artist would like to use but have not used before? So no, we don't allow artists to use tools that they haven't used. We do have a shop tech who can help a little bit, but they can't, like if you wanted to do a series of cuts ongoing throughout the residency, say on the saw stop, and you didn't know how to use it, then they could do a few of the cuts, but not all of them. How often do artists have access to the pile to pick from? Is there a limitation at all? There's no limitation. You can go in as the hours are, I believe, 8 to 4:30, so it's probably 9 to 4. You can go in and scavenge, and as much as you can carry back, you can take to the studio. There has to be room for us to walk, and there are some safety issues, but you can really scavenge pretty much what you want. And then the third question is, how closely do most artists keep to their proposal after they have access to the bits for picking? I assume there's some organic deviating once you get in and started. That's yes, absolutely. So you don't have to stick to your proposal. If you get here and you can't find the materials, or the materials, like you come up with this idea that you just can't get out of your mind, then you can change. But when you're submitting your application, in the proposal section, my strong advice to you is not to say, I'm going to let the materials guide me. We don't want to hear that. We want to hear like a very specific, detailed proposal, because we want to see what you're thinking and what you can possibly do. Okay, Kristen says, I was wondering if there are any printing resources at the studio if you're working with photography. So if you're working with photography, there are some resources we can add. We have a little bit of extra money that we can put towards that. We do have I wish Micah was still here. We have an inkjet printer, but if you wanted to get them a few professionally printed, we have a small budget. Okay, Samantha says, can we get a copy of PowerPoint? Video isn't accessible for audiovisual processing disability. Samantha, we can talk about that offline. I think we should schedule another phone call because we have a lot of other questions that I saw that I wanted to talk to you about. And I believe, Samantha, you have my phone number. Midori says, I'm interested in working on new art forms and experimenting to work outside my usual oof. Practice with the possibility is experimentation and stretching celebrated or welcome. Yes, absolutely. If you want to do something entirely different, that's great. We do want to emphasize that it's very important for us to have an exhibition at the end of the 4 months. So if it's something new and different, that's great. Yasima says, is there a central place where we can find all the past airworks? Yes, most of them are on our Flickr site, and you can go to our website. Elsa can throw that in the chat. You can go to our website, and if you go to the artist page and you click on them, it's kind of cumbersome, but if you click on each individual artist and you see the link that says photos, it'll take you to the Flickr site. And once you're there, you can kind of move around in there, or you can just go to our Flickr site. I think it's Flickr/Recology Air, but Elsa will put that in the chat. Julie says, are there size limits or minimums to projects? No, we don't say that you have to make 8 objects or that you have to create 2 videos. I mean, we leave that up to you. We know that you want the final exhibition to be a success. And so we kind of trust you. We do check in a lot with the artists. And if we think that we think that maybe you need to make more work, we'll say that. We've never said that before. So yeah, no limits. Could a project be destroyed as part of the project? Absolutely. If that's what you wanted and you wanted to document that in video, that would be fine. Great questions. Those are really wonderful questions. So we still have some time. After this webinar, you are welcome to submit your application. And if you have any ongoing questions, my email is art@recology.com. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I can help you answer questions. We do not go over the images or kind of review your proposal because we don't have enough time to do that for everyone. So we can't offer it. But if you have questions like we've been answering tonight, we're happy to answer more. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending the webinar tonight, and please get your applications in on time. Samantha, please reach out to me by telephone. Malcolm, are there any specific questions for Malcolm before we go?
Does anyone have any questions?
Cool. Well, I guess not. So Malcolm, thank you again for taking the time. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight.